something has come up during construction. There needs to be a change to the A101 construction contract. Which of the following could be used? So this is one of those questions where you have to choose multiple possibilities. In this case, they've told us it's 2. So the obvious answer here is C, change order. So a change order refers to any time during the construction process where something is changing. There's a change from the client, there's maybe a weather-caused change, maybe an inspector said something and we have to alter where the exhaust fan blows out to or something like that. There's some change that the contractor could not have expected. And so it's not built into their contract. It's not built into the A101 construction contract. Remember, the A101 is the contract between the owner and the GC. So the A101 equals owner and GC. And anytime I have a change to that contract, there's always going to be 3 issues involved. And those 3 issues are going to be the scope of the change, the cost of the change, and the schedule change. And the reason that those 3 will always be part of every change order is because those are the 3 aspects that are referred to as the essence of the contract. So the A101 has many, many different issues attached to it. There's lots of definitions, there's all sorts of roles people play, there's a lot of different issues that are in there. But if you were going to sort of just take everything out and you had to have 3 pieces of information that would tell you exactly what's going on in this contract, the 3 things that the A101 would tell you is what's the scope of work, what's the fee for building that scope of work, and how long will it take. Those 3 issues are the essence of the contract, and therefore on a change order, those 3 issues would always show up on the change order. So if you have maybe it's a change in paint color and the second color is more expensive, but it doesn't take any longer, then you would say 0 change to schedule. You'd still put it in even though it was a 0 days change. But then the dollar amount would change and then the scope obviously would change to the other paint color. Could be the exact same thing in the other way where maybe the paints are the same price, but it's going to take 2 weeks to order the second color of paint. So then the dollar amount change would be 0, but then the schedule would be altered by whatever amount of time, 2 weeks or whatever it would take in order for that to get worked out. So the idea is that if those 3 things are part of the essence of the contract, then everything that changes the contract should be clear that how they change those 3 issues. So okay, we've got excuse me, we've got one of the potential 2 answers here. Let's get rid of a few answers. Scope. Well, scope sounds interesting. It's part of what we're talking about here, but it actually doesn't make sense if you read the sentence. It doesn't really. It's a subset. It's not what would be used to alter the contract. So scope isn't it. I'm going to give a little X there. IDM is the initial decision maker. And that's a part of dispute resolution, so that's not it. Mediation is also part of a dispute resolution, so that's not it. A lien is interesting. That's a financial issue. It has a lot of contractual meaning. But a lien is when somebody feels they've been burned on a project and is claiming a certain amount of ownership in order to force somebody to pay them or have some other remedy be made. So lien is interesting, but not relevant here. So the only 2 possible ones that are left are addenda and construction change directive. So addenda seems like a really good possible answer, except addenda is when you change the drawings, you change the contract documents, but it's before there's a construction contract. So we don't have an A101 if we're in the moment of writing an addenda. When we're putting the bid packages together, we have the bid package, you've got drawings, you've got the spec book, you've got the project manual, you've got the forms that the contractors are going to fill out. You're going to give all those pieces of information to the various different bidders. They're then going to ask you a bunch of questions. You can't answer those questions directly because you don't want anybody to have more information than anybody else. So you wait until you get a bunch of answers, a bunch of questions, then you're going to put together an addenda, and you're going to make an official addenda and send it out to everybody so that everybody sees all of the answers to all of the questions. So that addenda is a great way to change the construction documents and even the contract documents, but you can't change the contract yet because you haven't chosen a bidder yet and they haven't signed the contract. So addenda is a very good answer, but not quite good enough. The other answer is the construction change directive. Many of you have probably heard of this, some probably have not. Construction change directive is a very odd little animal. Construction change directive, imagine you are working on a project and there's some change that comes up and you think it should cost about $500 extra to do that change. And let's say the GC comes back and says, yeah, we're going to give you a change order for $182,000. You're like, wait a minute, this should be about $500. It's not $182,000. That's ridiculous. Well, the project needs to keep moving. You have to be able to keep everything. Everybody loses their shirt if everything stops. So you need to keep the project going. So clearly there's some dispute going on there. This is something probably between the contractor and the owner. There's something that's making them want to behave badly in this situation. So what do? Well, built into the contracts, you have the right to do a construction change directive, which would come from the architect. And it's essentially a change order for the amount of money and the amount of time and the scope change that you think needs to happen. And then you hand it to the contractor and they have to abide by it. But if they really don't believe that the $500 is the right amount of money, then that would immediately start a dispute process. But the dispute process goes on simultaneously and probably long after the actual work has been done. So the construction change directive is when you can't get a change order because you can't get everybody to agree to the number, but you then say, okay, we're doing it anyway. You produce this document, the contractor does the work, bills for the amount that's available to them, but then would also probably start a dispute resolution through mediation or litigation or arbitration or whatever, probably not through the IDM because that would be you. Be a little awkward in that situation. And so they then move forward with the project and everything just goes on as usual until the dispute resolution comes back, at which point the dispute resolution process may say, yeah, it should be $500, so no change to what we did. And then that construction change directive becomes essentially a change order. It could be that they come back and say, no, the contractor was right, it really should be $182,000. And then that means that the owner now owes them that $181,500 more in order to compensate the extra amount. Quite likely it would come back as saying, well, 500 does seem a little low, 182 is way too high, maybe it's 1,000, right? So then the owner would owe that extra 500. So it's a way of pushing the project forward when the change order you can't get agreement on the change order. And like I just said, depending on who you talk to, it depends a little bit. At the end of the process, construction change directive becomes a change order because you're actually changing, it goes back to changing the contract, and that's what the change in change order is referring to. I said that once and I got sort of corrected by a lawyer because they were saying, well, look, by the time you go through dispute resolution, the project's probably done. It's probably many months later. So you're not really changing the contract, you're now altering the sort of end result of the contract, and so it stays as a construction change directive, but the contract has this extra number on it. Whatever, that part won't be in the exam. Just to really understand change orders, the essence of the contract, and the idea that if you can't get those things to work, then you have fallback positions, in this case, construction change directive, which helps you through those complicated moments when you can't get agreement.
For those of you who are ready to start preparing for the ARE right now, and if you're already an AIA member, you can use coupon code 41817PJMYT to get a 15% discount for the entire duration of your ARE exam prep membership. Finally, please leave a comment below the video to let us know what you think and share any suggestions you may have. I promise we'll read every word that you write and use them to tune our next episodes. So thanks for watching.